Bizarre Reality Media. The reality we live in can be a very strange place. Most of the time, fact being stranger than fiction. How will we ever start to understand this reality we live in unless we question everything? Join me and a guest as we unravel the mysteries of this reality, one topic at a time. This is Inquiries of Our Reality with Shayn Jones. What is up, Inquirers, and welcome to the expanse of deep conversational exploration into the fringes of social norms. I'm the one they call Shane, aka the original Shane Squatch, and today for you guys, I'm thrilled to have Gregory Fedora joining us once again. Gregory is not only a frequent guest, but also a dear friend whose passion for cryptids and folklore never ceases to amaze me. Today, we're diving into the mysterious world of the Snallygaster, talking about his new book, exploring its origins, stories, and the fascinating blend of myth and reality. But before we get into this fascinating conversation, as usual, just a couple of quick news and updates. Main thing, first and foremost, as I mentioned on the last episode, I am trying to talk about some new topics that are truly going to spark my interest to bring you guys a really, really great show. And one of the things that I really want to get into talking about more on the show, because it's always been one of my absolute favorite topics, is any form of mind control, any form of mind manipulation, anything that has to pertain to philosophy or psychology. So if anybody has any guests that they think would be great for that they would love to hear me have a conversation with, or if you yourself think that you might be a great person to come on the show and have a conversation with, make sure you guys get a hold of me. Make sure you guys pass along that information because, again, I want to bring you guys an even better and harder hitting show as we go forward into this year. But with that, of course, I will need some of your guys' help. So as we go a little bit forward, I will toss a couple ideas at you guys, but stick with me and I will continue to grow this show to be even better and hopefully even be able to get a good community going for all you guys, so all of you guys can get to know each other and get to talk about all the weird, bizarre stuff that you guys want to your heart's content, of course. And moving on, the next live episode of Bizarre Inquiries will be happening on February 5th at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over, again, in the usual place, the Bizarre Reality Media YouTube channel. And if anybody has any questions, clips, or articles that they would like to submit for that, make sure you get it to us before then. But if not, we will, of course, pass it along to the next episode. And if anybody is interested in being a guest on the show, sharing their experiences or encounters, or contacting me for any reason whatsoever, the best ways to do so are through my two emails, which are inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com or bizarrerealitymedia@outlook.com. Or you guys could also go and call or text the Bizarre Reality Media hotline 24/7, and that number is 313-364-1551. And if you guys happen to miss any of those ways of contact, all of that information is available down in the show description. And with that, let's get into the show. Please welcome back to the show one of the most frequently returned guests. Please welcome back Gregory Fedora. How's it going today, man?
Great, man. It's always great to be back here because I like hanging out with you and chatting with you and whatever. We always have fun.
Exactly.
Like, we try to stay on topic. It never seems to happen.
And just like your name
we'll try again this time.
And just like your name infers, you're a man of many hats. So that definitely kind of plays into the fact that, you do some cryptid research, you do your day job, which is definitely some interesting stuff. You do podcasting. So it kind of plays in that when you're a little bit of everywhere, it kind of makes it easier to have a conversation because you never know what direction it's going to go, but you have a million different directions you could potentially go in, which sometimes almost makes it harder to be a guest on a podcast, but
yeah. But we like every time we get together, we have a good talk and we have fun and we, like I said, so it's always, and we get the important stuff in and then the not so important stuff. So it's like it's a free for all fun fest.
Well, I guess before we get into the Fun Fest for today, and I know that you have something new that you want to share with the listeners, of course, that was pretty awesome that you invited me to have my name put on the back of it for, we'll get into that a little bit later on, of course, but for anybody that may not have, of course, listened to the first couple episodes we've done, you don't have to get as in depth, but at least give people a little bit of a rundown about what you do over there, man.
Hey, well, like you said, I do a podcast, and it's called the Fedora Files, and it's mainly about cryptid and folklore, but I go in other directions. I have different guests, and actually, this coming year, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different, which we can get into as well later. But so I delve into that, and I've written quite a few books. Like I have the Happy Little Monster series, which is just a bunch of different, like it's all the different lesser known cryptids around the world. And it's got cool art and little blurbs about each, and it's more fun to just a little paragraph on each, so you kind of learn a little bit about them, then leave it to your imagination and your time to go look into them further. Because there's a lot of cryptids people don't know about that are super cool.
How many of those do you have now?
Of course, there's 4.
4. Oh, I thought you were on 5 last time we talked, and I figured it was one of your ongoing series.
I haven't published 5 yet. I actually have 5, 6, and 7 all work together. The problem is I try to make each one a different color, and so then I realized that 5 was the same color as 1, and I was like, "Gosh, dang it!" So I've had to go back and reformat it to change the color of all. Because I try, each one's a different. I think 1 was kind of a tan, and then blue, then red, then purple, and then I wasn't thinking, and it was another one. It was very similar to 1. It was another tannish color. I was like, oh no, I can't. So I got it. So I had to go back, and I'm redoing all the colors of the pages. So that set me back. But I was working on 5, 6, and 7 all at the same time. So I've got them. So hopefully this year I'll be putting out 5, 6, and 7. Then I did a Bigfoot book, which I said I'd never do, which is called Sasquatch and Me. And it's kind of that's more of a narrative, novel type of book. So it's a story as opposed to actual research. And then the latest one is Blood and Beak, the Legend of the South Mountain Terror, and which is all about the Snallygaster, which is the oldest colonial cryptid. It's older than the Jersey Devil by 5 years, and it's available on Amazon, or you can go to my website, fedorasfiles.com. That's Fedoras, Fedoras files.com. And from there, you can get a link to the book, and there's all the books, and there's some T-shirts and other cool stuff on there you can see on that website. But so basically, it was when I found out about Snallygaster, which was a few years ago. I think we talked about it before on your podcast, but I was fascinated by it, and I was just like, "This is the craziest, weirdest thing I'd ever heard of," and the fact that it was so old, but then nobody was talking about it. It was everyone's heard of the Jersey Devil, everyone's heard of Mothman, Bigfoot, Champ, all these. The Wampus Cat, you've heard of all these things. But then the Snallygaster, people was like, what is that? And I was even like, what is that? And then the funny thing that happened was I had moved to Middletown Valley in Maryland, and I was actually researching something altogether different, and I came across it, and I was like, what? And then it said it lived on South Mountain. And to understand that, South Mountain is Middletown Valley is between 2 mountains, and one of them is South Mountain. And from my backyard, you can literally see South Mountain. So I was like, wait, this thing lives on South Mountain. What is this? So I kept looking into it. And as I said, Mothman, there's parties for it. Jersey Devil, there's parties for it. And there's a hockey team. They celebrate it, but for some reason, Maryland ignored this thing. And so I just started putting together as I was researching over the years, all these stories that I was finding. And most of them, they're folklore and they're little blurbs, like a paragraph or a couple sentences. So and so saw the Snallygaster, and that's about it. And even like said, like Theodore Roosevelt at one point was going to hunt it, and that's one of the folklores of it. So as I was collecting them, I just had them, and what had happened was there's a church in Middletown, and they decided to do a fall festival, and the priest at this church is really into folklore, and I've gotten to know him, and we became friends, and he was like, we were talking, and he asked me, he goes, what do you know about the Snallygaster? I was like, oh, I know some things about Snallygaster. He goes, could you tell some stories at the folklore fest that he was going to do at his church about the Snallygaster? I was like, yeah, I can do that. So I started putting them together as a story. Like, because I was like, well, I don't want to just read a paragraph and like, oh, and this happened. I was like, I want to make it like, a campfire story. And so I took I think I took about 3 of them at the time, and I put them together and made them into like more folklore, more story, giving it more character and like what the person was doing and thinking as these things happened. And so I told these stories, and afterwards, he and I were talking, and he was just like, you should put those together in a book. I was like, that's a great idea. So then I was like, well, I can't make a book of 3 stories. So then I was like, I got to go through, and I went through all of them, and I was like picking out the best ones and then making them a narrative. And that's when I got that together, I was like, I contacted you, and I was like, hey, dude, would you read this just and give me your thoughts on like what you think, if you think it's good, bad. And I go, and if you like it, can you give me like a little blurb of what you thought about the whole book altogether? And you did, and that was awesome. I loved your blurb. And then I gave it to one other podcaster, Christian from I don't know, Paranorm Girl podcast. I don't know if you've ever listened to her.
I've heard of the show, but I've never talked to them before.
Yeah, I was on her show once, and she's been really cool. We've kept in contact, and she sends me stuff, articles to read and stuff. So I was like, well, I'll let her read it too and get her thoughts too, because like she's more ghosts and stuff, and you're more kind of everything. So you both like read it and gave me cool little blurbs about it, and I was like, awesome. So I put them on the back of the book, and so I put it all together, and we published it. It came out in October, and the thing that was really funny, and I didn't know this, but so in Maryland, a reporter found out about me doing this book. So she contacted me and said, hey, no one's ever really put together all of the stories about the Snallygaster. Like it's been in other books, like it's mentioned in the Harry Potter series. In one of the books, they mentioned the Snallygaster. People have mentioned it, but no one's ever gone through and found all these different folklore stories and put them together and made them like a narrative. And I was like, really? I had no idea. And so they interviewed me and did a big article on it in the newspaper and this magazine that they do as well. And so that was kind of cool. And so now I got this book, and it's basically, it's the best, in my opinion, the best story. There's a couple, like if you go through there's like a couple stories of the Snallygaster that seem to overlap. It's kind of, or what I found, it seemed to be the same story, just told in a different way. So I kind of was like, okay, this is, in my mind, this is all the same story. So I'm just going to kind of blend it together. So hopefully my hope was by doing this, people can read it and be like, oh my gosh, this is what the Snallygaster is all about. And one of the things I also want to do, I usually do the art for my own books, but I didn't want to do the art because my art, I'm not a great artist. I'm more of a Photoshop type of person. Like I can take photos and manipulate them into before AI was doing it for everybody, I was literally creating monsters with Photoshop. And that's kind of like what I was really good at. But I was like, I don't want it to look like that. I wanted it to look very artistic. And this is where my friend Chris Battles, who is the illustrator for the book, he's actually a Marine Corps combat artist. He works at the Marine Corps Museum in Virginia, and we've been friends a very long time. And we've always been talking about wanting to do something together. And so when I threw it at him, he was like, dude, I want to illustrate that. And then he was like, what is a Snallygaster? Because he had, and I was like, you know what? I go, I'm just going to give you the book. You read it and read from the description in the book, and then you draw it the way you think it is. And then I told him, I go, and do not go online and Google it. I go, I just want to know, just from reading and how people describe it, how you would draw it. And he did. And it was really cool to see his version of the Snallygaster, which to me was very cool and frightening. Like a lot of times you see the art and it almost is goofy looking, and it's like, but the artwork he did, it's like, that looks like a terrifying creature that you would not want to deal with. And so I really liked seeing, because he's not really a cryptid person, and not really into folklore other than when he hears me tell stories. So it was really cool to see his version of what he thought it, like what he thinks it would look like. Because he was also like, well, if it's a real creature, it's going to have to look like this. It's going to have its wingspan is going to have to be this. And so he was like thinking, what would it be? So his research, he did a lot of looking at old dragon drawings, old dinosaur drawings, old bird drawings to like get an idea. Okay, well, it's got to have a huge wingspan. So it was pretty cool to do that. But yeah.
See, that's
thank you for reading it.
Of course, man. Like I said in the in the thing I wrote for the back of it, it's almost like a Gonzo style journalism view of the Snallygaster, because the way you write it, you end up writing it from like a first person perspective, telling these stories, and it almost kind of has the feel of like you're almost kind of there as it's happening, which is definitely a cool way of covering it, considering that, a lot of these cryptid books are very matter of fact. Here's the information that we have on it. But anything that kind of goes early 1900s beyond, they kind of fall into this weird point of like folklore and obscurity, because there wasn't any great documentation of it. A lot of the time with a lot of these old stories, there's not really anything left over from it that you can really check out. And then the other really hard part about some of these old stories is that there wasn't really anybody that was fact checking a lot of these writers back then. So, there could have definitely been something that happened. But on the other side, there was also this huge faction of all of these different facets of the press that were known for taking a small story and turning it into something bigger, or fabricating a story altogether, or even the other aspect of folklore that it kind of serves this second purpose in society, which I'm sure we'll kind of get into maybe some of the reasons why Snallygaster doesn't get talked about, because there's a little bit of a racial background to it. But it's always fascinating with these stories. Like I said, they're the early 1900s stories. They kind of live in this point of obscurity where it's really, really hard to pin down anything really, really definite on it.
Yeah. And it is. And like, especially like I was talking to somebody the other day about like 1909 in America had some weird like monster thing going on. There are so many stories that happened in the year 1909. Like between 1908 and 1911, you get all these like crazy, like the Van Meter Visitor. You get like some Jersey Devil stuff, the Devil Monkey, Wampus Cat stuff, and then Snallygaster. And it's like there's all these like weird. For some reason, America was tuned in to cryptids. And they didn't even call them cryptids at that time. It was just monsters. Because the cryptid name came later, cryptozoology and all that was not 1909. So, but it's just very fascinating. And again, like, you had like even President Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt was big into these things. He was like big into Bigfoot, although for him it was a wild man. And then he was even into the Ozark Howler. And then the Snallygaster, which he was supposedly going to go hunt down and kill, until they realized, the people that they thought were going to kill it, or that they thought the monster had killed, died a different way, and they found the bodies. So then he's like, I guess I don't have to go hunt the monster, Or did he really hunt it and use the Smithsonian to cover it up and say it was a distillery accident?
He took out the Jersey Devil too at that point. I mean, you never know for sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
you don't know. You don't know what's going on, man. He took down everything. And then he made national parks to cover it all up.
And also to reserve Bigfoot preserves, because, you know, he definitely had some workings in with the natives, and he definitely knew about the lost tribe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Hold on tight, guys. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And now back to the show. Well, I guess Snarly Yow, at least. I want to kind of bring it back to the beginning a bit, because I don't think we've really covered this too much on this show. I ended up covering on Bizarre Encounters a really long time ago, but other than us in passing, I haven't really gone too far in depth into the story. So considering that, you know, you ended up covering it in the book, I would love to kind of go to like the origins of it, where it first originated from, and kind of follow it chronologically, at least what you can put together for the book.
Yeah. So the origins is like, I mean, it actually goes back to Germany, and like, so the Germans had like these I'm going to mispronounce it because it's German, but Schnallgeists, and they're called quick spirits. And they were these things in the woods that were fast, and they'd attack you and steal your chickens and your children and wayward people. Well, these same Germans came over to America, and they kind of like settled in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Maryland. Well, they brought these superstitions and stories with them. And like, one thing we got to remember is like, back in that day, like if you go out in the woods now, I mean, it can get dark, but a lot of times we're so close to cities and stuff, there's still like light pollution. So there's still like, you know, it's not the same. But if you go deep out away from a town and get out into the darkness, I mean, it's eerie, and you see or hear things, and you're like, what the flip was that? And your mind starts going, and you got to remember, these people didn't have any technology. They're out in these woods hearing or seeing things, and we don't know what they saw or heard. And so then they have these stories playing in their head, adds to it, and I feel that there were some weird things. Like I'm one of these people that actually think that dragons were basically dinosaurs, and that they lived a lot longer than we want to say.
Oh, especially considering now with a lot of the modern research that we're figuring out that they were covered in feathers and everything. Like,
yeah, like suddenly all those pictures the medieval people drew of dragons with feathers. Like, well, wait, huh? Why would they? Oh, wait, they must have seen something. Or there's even recently a T-Rex, fossilized T-Rex, that they were actually able to extract soft tissue from the bones. Okay, well, you can't do that to something that's millions of years old. Like, you know, if you found a T-Rex bone and there's soft tissue in it, that thing is, you know, not as old as you think. So,
not to mention all the weird pockets in South America where, you know, you have like a Paradise Falls that was inspired by and everything. Like, yeah, there's a lot of weird pockets.
I mean, you can even go to Roman mosaics. There's and I'm not going to be able to tell you what the creature was called, but there's a monster or dinosaur that looked like a mix between a hippo and a crocodile. And it's a real thing, and in a mosaic, you see Roman soldiers and pygmies fighting this thing, and then they say, and it's in Pompeii, and it's in one other mosaic too, and another, and I can't remember. It's in Pompeii, but then it's in another place as well. But they have it, and then they're like, at first they're like, oh, it must have been a hippo or an elephant, but then you look at the mosaic, and they actually have a hippo and an elephant in the same mosaic that look like a hippo and an elephant, but then they have this other thing, and you're like, what the flip is that? And then now they have a skeleton of this thing, and they're like, oh, this is a xylophilophilia, whatever they call it. And it's like, and it's been gone for 30 million years. Oh, really? Well, then what were the Romans doing a mosaic of it for? You know, but that's neither here nor there. But so my thought is, they saw these things, dragons, dinosaurs, had interactions with them, came over here. Whether the Snallygaster ever really existed or not, it did in their mind. So they brought it from Germany, 1700s. The first story takes place about 1730, between 1730 and 1734 is the first sighting in my book, I made it like 1734. So I still made it come before Jersey Devil. But I blended a couple stories there together where there were two stories, and one was about a family that was attacked by it. And that was basically all it said. This family that lived on South Mountain was attacked there. And there was another story where a blacksmith fought off this Snallygaster in the 1700s. And that was all. That was, again, the only other part. So I was like, well, it's both 1700s. And, I'm going to make it one story. And then I made it like, and then I had a little fun with the names because I named the kids Hansel and Gretel. And then, and Maria. And like, I was like, just sort of like, cause like I didn't have names. So I was like, oh, well, this one I'm going to name the kids and that. And kind of, had fun with that. So that was the first story, was the 1700s. And then we kind of move along. It came back in the 1800s, and there's a man named Michael Zittel, and he's known as the Wizard of South Mountain, and he was a real man. And I've been to his gravesite on my Instagram. I have pictures of me at his gravesite. But he was a healer, but he also performed hexes. But what we think of hexes is not necessarily what it was. Like a hex back then could have been good or bad. So he could put a hex on a land to protect it, or he could put a hex on a land to destroy it. And one of the things he did was, and I'm going to try and say it correctly, is he would put a hex on your land to distill the things that live within the darkness of night. Or not distill, but disperse the things that live within the darkness of night. And that was a specific thing he did. And the things that lived in the darkness of night were the Snallygaster, the Hex Wolf, and the Snarly Owl. Those were the three big scary things in this area at that time. And that's what he was keeping off in demonic entities. And so there was a story that some people say that he encountered the Snallygaster because he did live on South Mountain, and he encountered the Hex Wolf and all these other things. People say he dealt with them. So I wrote a story about it. And again, he's one of these characters in this area where, depending on who you talk to, he was either a good guy or a bad guy. I tend to think he was kind of neutral. He did good things, he did bad things. I don't think he was necessarily, some people just outright paint him as a black magic practitioner, and I don't think he was. I think he seriously wanted to help people and did, but I think, someone paid him to do something. He's like, okay, yeah, I'll put a curse on that land. So, money was his morals, and apparently that eventually was his downfall. Was it because it's interesting that he kind of like said you shouldn't make a lot of money off of magic, and then he tried to, and then he ended up dying and destitute with no money. So there was a lesson there.
Same with a lot of these stories. He
encountered it. Yeah. So he encountered something and supposedly protected the land for some farmers and people. People loved him or hated him. They went to him when they needed something. And so that's one of those stories, is his encounter. And like he practiced, I think it's called powwow is what he practiced, which is kind of like, if you know what Santeria is, kind of a mix between Catholicism and voodoo, kind of. And hopefully I'm right. And if you're into Santeria, I apologize if I said the wrong thing. Please don't curse me. But I know it's like a mix of Catholicism and something. And powwow is very similar. It's a mix of Catholicism and German folklore magic. And that's what he practiced. So from there, and it's interesting, you'll kind of see this trend with the Snallygaster. It shows up and goes away, and you'll hear about it for a couple years, and it's like 20, 30 years, and then it comes back. So it's like, in kind of a weird, like, maybe 10, maybe actually not like 15, every 15 to 20 years, it It shows up, disappears, goes away. So after it dealt with him, Michael Zittel, during the Civil War, the big Battle of South Mountain happened. And one of the things that they did, the Northerners, knew that the Southerners were kind of superstitious. So they kind of threw out there that there's a monster that lives on South Mountain, that the Snallygaster lives on South Mountain. Whether or not that helped win the battle, we'll never know, but the Unions did actually win that battle. And so I did a story about the Snallygaster being there in the middle of the battle. So I was like, hey, why not? Like there was no supposed sighting of it, but it was talked about. So I was like, okay, that's kind of cool that, they threw that out there. So, I had to look up what happened at the Battle of South Mountain, like what went on and all that. And so then I was like, okay, it was during this day where it happened. And it literally was like right in the middle of an area where people have said that they have spotted the Snallygaster many times. From there, we get into the early 1900s. And that's where you had mentioned the thing about the race thing. And this is where really the first story was there was an African-American man that was murdered in the area. And it was blamed on the Snallygaster. And at the, and it was reported on, and they kind of made a big deal about that. And I know during slavery that it was thrown out there a few times as well. And so then that could be part of why we kind of talked about earlier, where people did not want to talk about Snallygaster because they used it to keep slaves, or the African Americans hold them down. And, it's like some dirty, bad, it was bad people who did it. But in my mind, it's like there's so many other stories to then just shame the Snallygaster out of existence, out of folklore of America, for a couple idiots who try to use it for nefarious reasons. I was like, that's dumb. I just have issue with that, because if you want to be honest, the Wampus cat was used for the very same way that the slave owners talked about, and that was in the Carolinas. They would say, hey, don't you go into swamps, the Wampus cat's going to get you. And, they tried to use it to scare slaves into staying where they were. The Jersey Devil was another, because they're like, hey, you're trying to go up through Jersey to get to freedom. There's the Jersey Devil. They tried to use a lot of the different folklore monsters and stories. And it wasn't just the Snallygaster. But recently, someone wrote an article about it. And actually,
just call it a hit piece.
It was. And here's the thing is, the two people I did not get interviewed for this, which is fine. But the two people who I know who did get interviewed for it, who love Snallygaster stories, talked about it. Well, they got misquoted, used just parts of their quotes, didn't tell the whole deal, and it was a hippie. And they both contacted the reporter and were like, hey, take our names out of this, because that is not what. And one, the reporter didn't say what they were really after and what they were trying to do. They came saying, yeah, we want to talk about this folklore creature. This is cool stuff. And then like, and the whole article was just about, how it was used. And that's why we should bury the Snallygaster. And it was like, dude, like, be honest. Like, and both of them were like, had the person told us what they were really trying to do, we would have never wanted anything to do with it, because it really was a blip in the history of the Snallygaster. It wasn't even like, that's like you said, the creature first stories were in the 1700s, and it came from Germany, and it had nothing to do with any of that.
It got used just as much by the bootleggers, honestly. I mean, it fits in as just as many bootlegger stories as it does the slave stories.
Right. Well, it actually fits into more bootlegger stories, because like the bootleggers used it to keep people from going up on South Mountain so they could hide their distilleries. And that's basically like some of the, like one of the main things about the Snallygaster is they say that before it attacks, it would let out this shriek, but the shriek was more like a whistle, like a, I can't whistle, but like a tea kettle whistle, and that would be like whether it was the wings or it was the beak or whatever, it would do this noise right before it attacked. Well, that was the same noise as the distilleries made when they were boiling. And so then people would hear that, oh my God, Snallygaster, don't go over here, get out of here, But that was the bootleggers and the moonshiners were saying that to keep people away. And that leads us into 1909, the guy who got killed. But then in I believe that was in the early part of 1909. Later in 1909 was the three men, like in my book, I think I made them the three brothers. And they die, and no one knows what happened to him. And then it gets to Teddy Roosevelt, then he and Kermit were going to come, Kermit's his son, we're going to come hunt the Snallygaster. And lo and behold, the story is that, they found the moonshiners and their distillery exploded, and that's what happened. Well, a lot of people say that that's what they want you to believe. So I went with that. So in the story I go with, Teddy comes and hunts the Snallygaster. Then a few years later, we have two other more moonshiners. This was like 20-some years later. It came back, and this time it got drunk from the moonshine and fell into the vat of the moonshine and basically got boiled alive. But not before they found an egg it had laid. So another Snallygaster was born. So, and it just keeps going. And in 1945, there was a guy who said he found something. And in 1970s was really the last story I found was a guy who was on the Appalachian Trail and supposedly had an encounter. And I didn't use his real name in the book because I was like, I don't know if his family would want to be associated with that. So I just changed his name. But like a lot of people said, it was the 70s. Was he doing like LSD? And like, how did, but whatever it was, when he came down, he was kind of messed up and claimed that he was chased by and he didn't call it the Snallygaster. He just said that some dragon chased him. So, but, it was in the South Mountain area on the Appalachian Trail. So,
did he give a little bit more detailed of a description by chance?
No, he just said it was a dragon, big wings, and glowing eyes. He said eyes, but everyone knows Snallygaster had one eye. But, who knows? He was running, so maybe it looked like two eyes. But everyone kind of like poo-pooed it and said that he was high on something. But at the same time, I just find it interesting that the guy was not from this area. And at that time, no one was really talking about Snallygaster. And he talked about a dragon on the mountain chasing him.
Well, let me ask you this at least. Coming from somebody that's from the area, because obviously I've done a lot of research into this, not as much as you, of course, but it's a little bit different coming from somebody from the area. One of the top theories seems to be that it may have been some type of possibly a big bird that had some type of like octopus or something like that in its mouth, or a squid from over near the ocean. Now, again, coming from somebody in the area, does that seem like it's something that might have validity? I don't know how far South Mountain is from the water. Does it seem like there might be something that's a possibility to that? Or you think that's just one of those like, oh, it's a blue heron, it's ball gas. Like it's just one of those thrown on explanations.
Yeah, I think that's a thrown because literally it would take... because I don't think octopuses or anything are coming up the Potomac. I've never heard of that. But the closest is a Chesapeake Bay. And driving at, of course we have to go I just can't see a blue herring getting it to the Chesapeake because it takes me an hour and a half without traffic to get to the Chesapeake Bay driving at 60 miles an hour. Actually, it takes me 2 hours. So I don't see that. And that would be the closest to getting an octopus or a squid would be the Chesapeake Bay. If it somehow got up and made its way into the Potomac, but the Potomac, I mean, it'd be swimming against the current. I don't know. That's just one of those where it's like, well, that's what we think it was, but because they don't want to admit that there's something weird. Nobody ever wants, you don't want to, like, I mean, I don't even want to say it's real because it's freaky. Like, that would just be a horrible, like, if I saw that, I'd be, oh, crap, it is real. It's like, it's one of those you hope is not real, because it, like, I mean, when you see some of the pictures people have drawn of it, you're like, oh, it's so cute. And no, it's so like it's a marshmallow. And it's like, no, it's like, oh, it was a terrifying thing. And no one was ever like wanting to see this. Like you didn't want to deal with it. So, and I don't think a blue herring would be terrifying, even with eating an octopus. I don't think something that size would cause the terror that people had for this.
Well, I mean, you definitely see the whole like dinosaur motif in the area, if that's what you want to throw it as. Dinosaur, dragon, whatever it is. They all seem to obviously be kind of fitting under the same radar as far as like as we keep advancing in science. But, as far as the whole dinosaur mythology, or even if you want to call it mythology, it seems to be mainly in the Americas, particularly a lot in South America, but there are still a lot of sightings in North America. I mean, you go into things like the Van Meter Visitor, for example, and that seems to have been some type of a pterodactyl sighting. You go into a lot of these, quote, Thunderbird sightings, and is it potential that these things could possibly even be some type of sighting of pterodactyls? And then you get into a lot of these old, cave paintings from like the natives, and they had these depictions of them riding these dragon things or these little like dinosaur-looking things. So clearly there might have been some remnants in North America still, and especially in the 1700s when people really weren't that far into the land and they hadn't really uncovered too much yet. I mean, I definitely think that,
and like Native Americans had stories of those kind of creatures even in this area, like dragon-esque, thunderbird, so I think that played into it too. Like Native Americans were like, they were, so I think
I mean, even Uktena, the giant antlered, serpents. I mean, that honestly could still fit under the whole like dinosaur idea too, especially if you consider the ones that they kind of have the ideas of in like South America, for example, or even going over to like Japan, where there are these dragon, snake, serpent looking type things. I mean, the Uktena was this giant serpent, so it still kind of fits in with that motif of these potential remnants of, quote, dinosaurs or dragons left over.
Yeah, and if you recently saw, like, I don't know how is recent as in within the past 5 years, they found that fossilized dinosaur in China, and it looks like the way the Chinese people drew dragons. Like it was a very serpent-like thing, was like front legs, and it was huge, and they were just like, wait, this is how they've always drawn their dragons. And now we found a fossil of something that how they've always celebrated their dragons.
Same with the Aztec too. They had the long serpent feathered looking dragons too that exactly fit basically how the Japanese were drawing their dragons.
Yeah. And it's like, what is going on here? This is, there's too many coincidences of like how things look and now as science is, the way I see it, the way science is catching up to folklore and mythology. So it used to be like, oh, that's myth and folklore, that's fake, and science is proving it wrong. And it's like, oh, wait, now science is now caught up to the mythology and folklore. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. So wait, they had feathers? Oh, wait, what? It's like, okay, that's weird, because that's how all these ancient people and even medieval people depicted dragons with feathers. And it's like,
Inquiries of Our Reality will be right back after this brief commercial break, so stay tuned. And now back to the show. See, one of the worst parts about it is you don't know if we're ever going to fully catch up, meaning that every bit of folklore has some type of truth to it, whether there was an actual creature sighting or it's a bit of folklore that was created because it has purpose, such as, like warriors that don't want to go near the river at night. They can't just say, oh, I'm scared to go near the river. They got to say that there's a monster down there, because then it makes them still sound like they're heroic and manly. But
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. My biggest fear now is the fact that all these things will exist in obscurity, because there were pockets of these things that did exist, which is where the folklore originally came from. But now, looking at them years later, these pockets may not be there anymore. So now we're looking at it like, oh, it was all a hoax right from the beginning, but there may have actually been something there, but now we're just too late to catch back up with it. I mean, obviously there's people still having a lot of like Sasquatch sightings and stuff, but as we get closer to these things, I'm curious if a lot of these things are potentially dwindling down in number, and we're just getting these last little remnants of them. But now, thanks to the internet and not being able to necessarily know what's false, what's real anymore, we're almost getting to a point where it's like, we'll never really know for sure, because you can't trust videos of anything. And again, these pockets could slowly be dying out, where some of these last sightings were, back in the 70s, before people started really, building up these concrete jungles around these areas.
Oh yeah. And I mean, and that's one of the sad things. And that's also kind of like why I wanted to put the book out there, is because, like I said, like this now, I guess it's kind of gotten a little resurgence, but like I didn't want it to fade away and not there be some kind of record of it, and get the stories all put together in some form. That's also like, it tells a story, it's entertaining, and it's fun. And like you said, it's not like your typical, like, because a lot of people will do like a research on it and it'll be like, and this is what, be very matter of fact. I was like, I didn't want to do a matter of fact. I wanted to be something that you would enjoy reading and be like, that is cool. And then you can go and research. Again, my thing is always go research and find out more for yourself, find out like what other stories are, because like I said, I didn't do every story there is of the Snallygaster. And I even had like one of the big stories with it. It's Snallygaster's biggest arch nemesis was the hex wolf, which is also known as the Dueo in this area. And they were very territorial and they fought. And now there's stories of that. So I put one of those stories in there because I was like, it's part of the lore. And someone, when they asked me after they read the book, they're like, so are you going to do one on the Dueo now? And I was like, I probably should. So, because like, that's one of those, like, because I did one story about the Dueo in, fighting the Snallygaster for territory. And I was like, but there's a ton of Dueo Hexwolf stories out there. And it's like kind of a dog man type thing. And I was like, maybe I should put those all together, because there's a lot of cool stories and sightings from this area on it, and before it, vanishes and people forget about it,
And it's still like, it's far enough, but semi-recent enough where you still might be able to get stories where it's like the grandkids of the people that were the original people. So you might be like at the very last precipice of potentially getting somewhat of a, quote, first-hand encounter from one of these experiences, because, early 1900s, we're at the remnants now where the people that are elderly were, that would have been like their grandparents telling these stories. So if you don't go out and get these stories now, they're going to just essentially live in obscurity. And as soon as the internet gets a hold of them, it's like you never really know where the truth of it came from anymore, because everything just keeps getting recycled, retold, and then it turns into telephone again.
Yeah. And that, what was cool is like when I actually met a guy after I wrote the book. I ran into him and he bought a copy of the book and I signed it. And he was actually neighbors with the Zittel family, who Michael Zittel is like and he was like telling me, he's about 20 years older than me, but he was telling me stories his grandfather had told him about the Zittel family, as well as the Snallygaster, as well as the Hexwolf. And he was like, yeah, man, he goes, my grandpa, he believed it. Like, and this guy's 70, so his grandpa would have been like early, late 1800s, early 1900s. And he's like, yeah, they this was legit to them. They were afraid of whatever this was. And I was like, that is crazy. I was like, that's kind of cool that, at the same time, it's crazy but cool at the same time. You're like, wow, that he was like kind of confirming that, yeah, these people, this was a real thing to them. And so, I haven't had any encounters, and I've been up there, but who knows? Maybe like you said, it could be cyclical, and maybe the guy ran into it in the 1970s. Maybe someone else ran into it in the 1990s, but they didn't want to tell anybody. It's kind of like alien abduction. Do you really want to tell anyone that you were probed? No, you probably don't.
Especially talking about something like the Snallygaster, where you're talking about this dragon-looking thing with tentacles in its mouth. Aliens are already one of those things that people would actually somewhat take into consideration. I feel like if you have an experience, the two that people are probably most prone to listen to at this day and age, number one would probably be ghosts, and number two would probably be aliens. But if you start getting into dragons or these weird squid mouth things, no, you're out in a point where the only people that are gonna really listen are people like us that enjoy these type of things.
Yeah, tell me more. Yes.
You saw a dragon thing out there? Yeah, one-offs. Yeah, tell me every single thing about it.
Yeah, I want to know everything you know. So, yeah. Exactly. So you can talk about ghosts and aliens, and everybody loves it. But then when you get into dragons and monsters and Bigfoots, Bigfoot he gets a little bit more of a pass. People like him because he's got good press.
Just with the outdoor people, at least. Any camper is down to hear a Bigfoot story.
Oh yeah, but then you get into the lesser known ones. People are like, yeah, I don't. What? Come on, there's no dragon. It's with tentacles, come on, in one eye, whatever. No.
I mean, in all fairness, though, I will say within the cryptid community, though, there's all these things that we call cryptids, but there are these ones that we clearly know that are fake. But they're fascinating. The folklore is fascinating. Don't get me wrong, but we have to categorize them a little bit better, because when you have Squonk and Bigfoot in the same category, it's kind of hard to make people take cryptids as a whole. There might be some good stock to them, because even within the cryptid community, it's we all know where Squonk comes from. It's definitely a fascinating story that has a lot of cultural heritage to it as far as Pennsylvania and everything goes, and deforestation and everything. But it comes from the same book that snipes came from, which everybody that has lived in any area away from the city, what snipe hunting is. So, we're throwing all these things in the same category. So when people see it on paper, they'll see Snarlygaster, Bigfoot, Squonk, and it's they think that within the cryptid community, we think that all of these things could potentially be real, but you have to there has to be a better way to separate yes, this is folklore, this could potentially be real, so that we don't have this weird blend like Snallygaster, where it's the idea has some really good validity to it going in with a lot of other aerial type encounters, but because of the obscurity of the initial description of the thing around the area and time that it ended up coming out with, it gets stuck in that area of folklore with Jersey Devil, for example, Squonk, all of these things, which there needs to be a better differentiation of category, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, like I said, when Snallygaster first came out, it was in the 1700s, and like I said, you go out in the woods far enough away where you can't hear city and you can't see lights, and you walk around and you hear something, and you just see out of the corner of your eye some shadowy creature, and it could be a big barn owl, it could be any of these things, but your mind, and especially in that time period where you're coming from Germany, where they had these stories.
Not to mention, you don't even know the land that you're in. You don't even know the animals that could be there. You're new to the area altogether. You don't even know the standard animals.
Yeah, you don't know that, but you have stories of these dragons, and I think that over in Germany that there were some kind of at some point, that they were still dealing with, and that's part of their zeitgeist, and they knew about it. Then they come over here, and the Native Americans are talking about these dragon-like thunderbirds in the sky, and then whoa, crap, they have them here too, so you're there, and then you get these things, and these stories go and they go and they go, and and we kind of forget that light bulbs and all that are less than 200 years old.
The meme about the cryptids where it shows European cryptids and they're all light and fluffy and happy looking, and then it shows American cryptids, and then there's a guy with an AK-47 and these giant scary monsters in the woods.
Yeah.
it kind of makes you wonder if that's literally just a representation of people's understanding. European countries were all places that, for the most part, everything was pretty explored. Like, there was some wooded areas, there's some mystery within the woods, but the wooded areas aren't nearly as big and vast as they are here. So you get to North America and you have all these nomadic tribes, which obviously when you're nomadic, I mean, even look at the Mongolians nowadays, they still don't fully have a grasp of everything that's in the land, because it's hard to, when you're constantly on the move, to really like have the time to really say, all right, this, categorize everything specifically. So now you bring these Europeans over, they don't know anything in the land. They're hearing these stories coming from the natives that are just like, yeah, something big in the sky, we avoid that. And then all these different stories end up starting to come from that thing. So then it ends up completely creating this like image of exactly how we view North American cryptids, that they're these dark, scary things, simply because we're coming at it from a European perspective, that this was the untamed land. So that's where all of these dark things that would sit in the corner of your mind would start to still and start to come to the surface, would be in the dark woods of North America where the nomads live,
Yeah, and they would kill you and eat you, and that's what you had to deal with. And so... But yeah, that's kind of like the craziness that it was, but it's a fun crazy in my mind. So
yeah, I mean, as long as you keep writing books about this kind of stuff, man, I'm always interested in hearing you dive into all this stuff, because it's always good to get a more well-rounded perspective on some of these old events before you don't have the opportunity to. Because one of the ones that drives me the most crazy is the Kentucky meat shower. I mean, they literally had like samples of supposedly this thing, but it wasn't preserved properly. So it's like right at the cusp where you could possibly figure it out, but it fell into obscurity because now you have no means of being able to actually have a point of reference. So at least with this one, if people like you are taking that last opportunity now to actually start to be able to talk to some of these people to finally document this stuff, maybe Snallygaster may not be understood now, but in 100 years, 200 years, when maybe we start digging into different types of fossil records or DNA records of the area, maybe some of these mysteries will actually start to be able to be understood because of proper documentation now at the last opportunity. So, I thank you for taking the opportunity to try to do something like this.
Yeah, it would be really cool if like we found like a skeleton of like some kind of pterodactyl in South Mountain somewhere. That would be amazing, because then it'd be like, oh well, that was probably what they were seeing, and that's probably where the story came from,
Or I mean, even just an unrecognized bone that it could have came from some kind of DNA that we don't necessarily understand. I mean, we may not understand it now, but with later on documentation, maybe they find a full fossil record of this thing somewhere else. They can DNA track it, and they go, oh wow, there was some type of flying, feathered dinosaur, quote dinosaur, in this area. And these Snallygaster stories might make sense. There may have been a small little pocket remnant left. Because I mean, they said with a lot of these prehistoric things that the life, I mean, it's kind of hard to know for sure. A lot of this stuff is a lot of theories, but there was a lot of guesses that the life expectancy was a lot longer. I mean, you get into stuff, for example, like the Greenland shark, where these things live in such weird obscurity that they guess that they might even reproduce every 200 years. So if you're dealing with reptiles and bigger animals like this, who knows how often they even breed or how long these things' life capacities could be for. I mean, a group of 3 could live 200-300 years, reproduce. There's another 200-300 years, and you're only dealing with a pocket of like 3 or 4 of particular species.
Yeah, and a tortoise can live hundreds of years, and it's like, what was that one that just recently died?
Oh, the Galapagos tortoise.
Yeah, it was like alive when. What was it? Was it Napoleon?
No, it was Charles Darwin. It was the one that I think Charles Darwin was standing on the shell back when he started, doing stuff with Galapagos.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Charles Darwin. Yeah, but I mean, that's like 1800s, and it was still alive till recently. You're like, what? So, I mean, yeah. So it is fascinating. And like I said, maybe it wasn't as big as they say. Maybe the shadows and the darkness, and people just, and like I said, they saw something, it scared them, and when you, like you said, the old fish tails or the old phone game, it just goes from being like a wingspan of 12 feet to 100 feet, and 12-foot wingspan really isn't that big. Like if you really think about it, there are birds. I think condors are about that. So
I mean, I don't know what big birds you have in the area or what potentially could be flying out at night, for example. But, if you're, again, coming from Germany and you look at it in the most literal translation as quick ghost, if there's something that's moving high up in the trees at night and it looks like it's moving in bursts, you start creating these stories around it. And then next thing you know, there is maybe something bigger that's in the area. And then you start having these blendings of two different things happening. You have, these stories of maybe barn owls flying around at night that people didn't understand. But there's also this one weird one-off creature in the area. And then they start both playing in that people think it's the same thing, but it might actually be two potentially different things that all get grouped together.
Exactly, yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. And hopefully part of me would like to know, but part of me likes that we don't know what really started it all. It adds. I like that there's a little bit of mystery that we don't know what caused it or what's causing it.
That's how I feel about Sasquatch and aliens. I mean, as cool as it would be to have an alien confirmed or a Bigfoot confirmed tomorrow, as soon as it's confirmed, we kind of lose the opportunity to theorize and create mystery around it. So it's like, as much as it'd be cool to be confirmed that, all of my beliefs are real, it would also kind of kill the fun at the same time,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's fun to have some mystery and wonder what caused it and why and who thought of it.
Humans need that, and it's hard to find nowadays. So you got to take whatever you can get nowadays.
Yeah, we're losing the fun stories and the mysteries. Everybody's like just stuck on their phones and whatever, and and now you got these horrible AI things that you're just like, oh my gosh, like it's getting to the point now that you don't even know what like in the way AI is going. It's eventually it's gonna be like, was that real or AI? It's like some of them are getting really good at it's hard to tell. Like right away, like eventually you're like, okay, yeah, that's fake. But
it might be a good thing though. Maybe people eventually get sick of all of this fake stuff, and then we'll start the new frontier. For Star Trek, for example. They use AI, but they use it properly as a tool. In that they don't use it as a companion to live with, to use for every single facet of their life. I feel like you get to a point where a technology or a thing comes out, and you overuse it to a point where you're like, all right, I'm bored of this. I'm just going to use it for the most practical use that could possibly be used for. We're in this boom right now with cell phones, with AI, with all of this stuff. But I think people are going to get to a dead end with it, where when you can't trust anything on it, people are going to start getting back out in the real world now again, so they can actually explore and actually see things. And once that explorative spirit is reestablished in this new time of people possibly figuring out quantum mechanics and all this type of stuff, maybe it'll open the door for new exploration, and maybe we'll be lucky enough to live in a future like Star Trek instead of a dystopian future.
yeah, it'd be much better.
I'd much rather communicate with species that can, warp and shift reality in a positive way, rather than ones that are just using it to completely annihilate the galaxy, which, there are the Borg, but if we all team up together, then, we'll take the Borg out eventually.
Exactly. We can win.
Exactly. Hold on tight, guys. This is our last break, so stay tuned. And we are back to the show, so let's hop right in. Well, I guess with that, man, I always like to, actually, before I end the show with some words of wisdom with you, and before we get into your podcast links, first and foremost, again, tell people where to get the book at.
Okay, so you can either find out on Amazon.com, or if you just go, probably the easiest, if you go to Fedoras, Fedoras, files, FILES.com, fedorasfiles.com. You go there, you'll see it's like right on the very front page. If you scroll down, you'll see the book, the Snallygaster book, and you click it, and that will take you to Amazon. And because you're just going to purchase it through Amazon, but like that way you don't have to type in the name of the book, because Blood and Beak, because like you'll have to type in Blood and Beak, Terror of South Mountain. That way, just go to fedorasfiles.com. That'll take you there, and you can see all the other books I have on that website and click and get them. And so you go there, and then my podcast is on Spotify as well as on YouTube, and it's the Fedora Files. And if you type that in, you'll find it. It's there. Let's see, my Instagram, if you want to know that as well. That would be, let me look because I always say the wrong thing and then people start following the wrong person. But it is G_Fedora_crypto. And that is the Instagram page. And from there, you can get to YouTube and all the other places as well. So, yeah, those are all the places. And we did a really good job of not going off the rails.
Yeah, I was going to say, we actually somewhat kept on track today. But, of course, if anybody wants to listen to those off-the-rail conversations or wants to dive into some of your previous books, of course, that we've covered on the show, I always recommend going back and checking out our previous episodes because, again, this was probably one of the most tame ones.
Yeah, it was. We were like, what happened? Maybe there's something in the water I was drinking. It kept me focused.
Oh, I've been taking some time off lately for the holidays and stuff and with the family. So I also feel like that kind of plays in. I'm not so scatterbrained. I'm a little bit more focused because I haven't been, burned out from shows. I'm a little bit more rested coming back in. So
Nice. There we go. We'll do another one where we go off the rails later.
Oh, yeah. Those ones are always fun, of course. And before we completely wrap up, man, I always like to end the show with some words of wisdom. So if there's any words of wisdom you want to bestow on the listeners today, what might it be?
I would say listen to every story and enjoy it. Like, don't try and explain or try and find an explanation for every story you hear. Just be entertained. A lot of times we sit there and someone tells a story and like, well, that can't be real because of blah, blah, blah. Just listen to the story and enjoy it because they're telling you a story. Just sit there and enjoy it.
Whether it's fact or fiction, it's still an enjoyable story to listen to,
Yeah, just listen to the story, and, relax. You don't have to give your 2 cents.
Take it for what it is.
To their story, enjoy it. Yeah, that's it. That's my words of wisdom.
Well, man, as usual, some awesome words of wisdom and definitely a fun conversation. Always really fun having a conversation with you, man. Really looking forward to next time. And I thank you for, 1, coming back on the show, and 2, giving me the opportunity to be featured on the back cover of your new book.
Oh, thank you for reading it and letting me know your thoughts because that helped me because I was like, when I wrote it, I was like, is this even good? Because it was a different approach than I'd normally done. So, like, normally it was just, like you said, I did little blurbs. I'd still have funny things written in it, but it was like little blurbs of everything. And this was the first time I focused just really on one cryptid and tried to tell all the stories. So it was thank you for your kind words that I could use.
I mean, also coming from the perspective of just knowing you as a person too, I found this one really, really cool because you mix the 2 things that you do. You're really good at these like narrative stories, but you're also really good at, collecting these obscure stories that fit into these cryptid narratives. So I found it really interesting that you kind of blended your 2 story types into one in this one. It seems like, maybe that's your thing going forward is that you take your best strong suit of both and you put them together because, you say you only feel like you touch little blurbs when you end up diving into the full cryptid stuff, but you're also really, really good at creating narrative stories. So at least from, again, somebody that really enjoys that gonzo journalism style of writing, and I definitely enjoy investigative journalism when it comes into cryptids. It was just a new perspective on a lot of the different cryptid writings. And like I said, I enjoyed it because it was both your styles put together.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And again, like, thank you for being like a beta reader and letting me know like what you thought.
Definitely, man.
Hopefully
I love the
people
opportunity.
will enjoy it. Like, yeah, and if people get it and write to me and let me know their thoughts, and hopefully I think the next one I do like that is going to be the Hex Wolf, because that's someone actually asked me if I would do it. So I was like, it's in my mind. I've started collecting Hex Wolf stories, so it'll take me probably a year to collect all the stories, and then before I start writing it. So.
And then I'm sure we'll be back around to this as soon as it ends up coming out. So at some point to the listeners in the future too, when that book ends up coming out, I'm sure that you guys will end up hearing about it on the show too. So
cool. Yes. And come check me out and leave me messages. I love hearing from everyone.
If any of you guys might be interested in supporting the show and all of the hard work behind it, don't forget you guys could always go and check out the Patreon with 2 tiers available, ad-free/early access and full access with 7-day free trials available if you guys want to see what it's all about. And you guys can also go and check out the Bizarre Reality Media merch store with t-shirts just $15.68 plus shipping, which equals out to about $20 after shipping, so about average for a t-shirt. And in the process, of course, you guys can support the little guy. And speaking of supporting the little guy, if you guys find any value in the show and you want this show to stick around for a very long time, one of the best ways to make sure that that happens is to donate to the show directly. You guys can do so through PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, any value you might find in the show, from 50 cents to whatever high amount you guys happen to choose. And of course, I will give you guys a big shout out on the show for whatever you guys happen to donate. And at some point coming here soon, I will make sure that we get some type of a point system for anybody that might be interested in supporting my work, so that you guys get a bit of a reward for it, of course, on the back end. But more information coming on that as we go farther into 2026. And the last way you guys can support the show is by going and checking out the affiliate links with some additional discounts and credits available for you guys. And again, more information on that is available down in the show description. And I know that times are tough out there, especially with the holidays just ending and the start of the new year. But if you guys might be interested in supporting the show in some other awesome ways, the absolute best ways that you guys can do that is by leaving a review or rating for the show anywhere you guys happen to listen to podcasts. And of course, if once I find it, I will read on the show and give you guys a massive shout out. And you guys can also go and follow the show on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. You guys can also share the show through word of mouth with anybody that you think might happen to enjoy the show, because grassroots support from listeners like you guys is exactly how shows like this grow. And you guys can also go and catch live shows and catch video content anywhere that you guys happen to find that kind of stuff. YouTube, Rumble, all that good stuff. And last but not least, you guys can also go and check out my other show, Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin. If you guys are possibly looking for another show to get you guys through the work week, talking about a lot of the same stuff that we do on this show, but in a little bit of a different format, because it's usually us deep diving and less with the interviews. But again, might be something else to get you guys through the work week. And every single thing that I mentioned is all available in the link tree, which is available down in the show description. And with that, hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. Hope today's show has connected some dots in your own reality. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a good night, everybody.
Reality isn't what it's